Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me again on our every other night a week mental health live stream on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So tonight's topic is really, I want to kind of open it up to see whatever is on anyone's mind tonight. We had a great simulcast, live cast, whatever, Wednesday night with Professor Nick Fortino. Got into some great discussions, took a lot of good questions. But tonight I want to kind of revert back to the original purpose of this, which is to just hear whatever's on your mind, whatever somebody's struggling with anything. There's a lot of chaos on the planet right now, especially in this country. Hey, Pat, how you doing? Haven't seen you here before, but remember, Pat, howdy to you too. But this is about you guys engaging with me. So the way it basically works is you guys ask me questions about whatever's on your mind. It can be mental health, it can be politics, it can be whatever you want. But the main reason I'm doing this is to normalize conversations about mental illness, mental health. We all have a degree of mental illness. Every single one of us on this planet. Some people have it minor to moderate. Some people have it moderate to extreme. So the reason I'm doing it live instead of just taping it is because I want people to engage with me and ask questions. So if this is your first time, if you're catching this after the live broadcast, please ask a question, because this is not about me just being another talking head on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. This is about you guys engaging with me. So I wanted to get to a couple of questions I got from a previous broadcast. And it's interesting, these two questions came in back to back. So basically the exact same question. So Linda and Carol. Linda asks, how does one keep from ruminating on specific thoughts? And then right after that, Carol asks, how do you stop yourself from constant rumination? Great questions. Okay, those are great questions, because if people don't know what ruminating is when you're just constantly thinking about something. You can't stop thinking about it, or your mind just there's actually kind of two forms of ruminations. One is you're ruminating on a specific thought, or the other is you're ruminating about just general thoughts, meaning your mind is just wandering all over the place. So I'll get to the first one first. And again, remember, please ask a question or make a comment. So ruminating thoughts, how do we stop our mind from constantly wandering? We have these very active minds. A lot of times we move from thought to thought. A lot of times, they're negative thoughts. It's something that's plaguing us. If our mind was producing constant happy thoughts, joyful thoughts, abundant thoughts, so to speak, we wouldn't want to stop that. We would be like, bring it on. I want more of that. So in general, though, dealing specifically with something you're ruminating about, like if your mind is constantly fixated on a specific set of thoughts, let's say you're constantly anxious, or you're constantly depressed, or you're worried about something, you got to get into that. I know we live in a culture that, like I've said many times before, stigmatizes negative thinking, negative thoughts. But in reality, the only way you're ever going to master your mind, so to speak, is if you deal with what's in your mind. You're not going to be able to let go of negativity that you're struggling with if you don't deal with it. I know, again, that's our culture. Kill your enemy, kill the pain. Look at what the opioid epidemic is all about. It's all about people who want to kill their pain. So if your mind is constantly racing and constantly moving from thought to thought, again, guys, if you're watching this, please ask a question, okay? I'm just bringing up this topic. These are two questions that were asked for me before. So if somebody's struggling with something, if somebody's got COVID depression, or I was working with a client today who is one of the long haulers, and he's not as bad as he could be, but he's definitely feeling the effects. And we were talking about how people just sort of expect him to, come on, man, get over it already. So if you're struggling with that, if you're struggling with anything on your mind or something that you want some psychological advice on, again, my name is Dr. Stephen Walker. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. You can check my website out. It's licensedpsychology.com. You can shoot me a question there. You can ask me anything you want. But the point of these live broadcasts are for you. It's for you to engage with me. So please share this. This is my attempt to help normalize conversations about mental illness. I'm doing this on my own time, not getting paid to do this. I'm trying to help people deal with what's on their mind so that they can find some peace of mind. The only way to find peace of mind, at least for my 20 plus years of experience, is working on what's on your mind. Acting as though it's just going to go away or you're going to be able to let it go is completely unrealistic. People have these emotional wounds and that they're not dealing with. And what Linda and Carol asked about was, how do you stop yourself from constant rumination? Well, you don't just stop yourself from it. You got to deal with what you're ruminating about. You have to sit with that in your mind and spend a little time going through what is going on with you. So there are a couple different ways you can do that. Meditation is all the rage these days. So meditation is a great way of just allowing yourself to be present in your mind. Now, a lot of people think that meditation is you sit and you have no thoughts and your mind just sits perfectly still. Sure, that's once you've mastered meditation. That's years and years of practice. What meditation is for the beginner is a pendulum of trying to keep your mind calm or focused on one thought or no thoughts at all. And then you lose that. And then you have to become aware that you've lost that and you bring it back. And what happens is your mind you lose it again. Your mind wanders away and you bring it back. So that's meditation. People think that meditation, I hear this all the time. People say, oh man, I gave it up because I just can't keep my mind from not wandering. Hey, Fernando. So Fernando's asking, hi all, would ruminating be considered anxiety? In a sense, ruminating can be considered anxiety if you're ruminating about anxious thoughts. So if Fernando is ruminating a lot about, oh God, I'm got these issues with my family or my whatever, or I'm worried about money or work or whatever, then yeah, those thoughts are going to make you anxious. But if Fernando is ruminating on, oh, I love my life and I'm at peace and I've got everything I need and I'm just breathing in the moment and I'm ruminating and my mind is just wandering from the universe is helping me out and God loves me and my wife loves me and I'm giving thanks and I'm focusing on the moment, then sure, those aren't going to produce anxiety. But most of us have worries and most of us have issues from our past that we have not dealt with, and myself included. I mean, I've done a lot of work I'm 55 years old. I've done a lot of work on myself to get to this point, but I still have moments where I get angry, I get frustrated. I still have issues in my immediate family where I can get triggered by certain members of my family, not to the point where I'm losing control of myself, but they can elicit a negative emotional response because of certain familial patterns that we've had since I was a kid. So can ruminating be considered anxiety? The actual act of rumination isn't really anxiety. It's more of what you get anxious of, what you're ruminating about. So what Fernando just did, guys, and Pat, if you're still on, dude, I'm waiting for a question, man. So, but what Fernando did is exactly why I'm doing this. I start with a topic, but then I need you guys to engage with me because people have this idea that mental health people, psychologists, counselors, whatever, are these, I don't know that we seem to occupy this idea in people's minds that we're not real people. And that's a lot of because of a lot of fault goes to the providers that, in the past, there's a lot of old school psychologists and people who I don't know what the hell they were doing, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't want to put people down, but I'm always fighting this tide of people expecting something from a psychologist that I just tend to be very real with my patient clients, and we talk just very normally like you would talk to somebody else. So just thanks for the question, Fernando. And I'd be curious, Fernando, if you guys have made any movement on that other thing we were talking about. So meditation. So meditation is the act of allowing your mind to be centered in something. Either, so what I work with my clients on is a form of meditation called Vipassana meditation. So Vipassana meditation is an Indian form from India, and they've used Vipassana meditation in Indian prisons for many years now. And what they're finding is, and you can look all this up online, but what they're finding is they've given inmates in the prison the choice of either doing hard labor or doing this Vipassana meditation. And the mechanics behind Vipassana meditation go back thousands of years, but they're very simple. What you're doing is you're literally just focusing on the air coming in and out of your nose. So it sounds simple, like, well, what can that do? But what's amazing about it is the more you do it, the more your mind starts settling, because what happens is you'll pick a spot on either on the inside of your nose. And I sometimes get my patient clients to focus on the hair inside their nose. They'll see if they can actually feel it, ebbing and flowing as the air comes in and out. Or some people pick a spot on the outside of the tip of their nose and they focus on the air coming in and out. Now, what's going to happen is that's your focal point. But what happens is your mind begins to drift. So this meditation is a combination of, I do it, is not I, like I invented it, but it's just a technique that I utilize, is combined with mindfulness meditation. So if no one's heard of mindfulness, I'll just assume that I'll give you the quick Reader's Digest version of mindfulness. So mindfulness there are two forms of mindfulness. There's, we're going to focus on the air and we're going to feel the room around us. We're going to feel the light. We're going to feel the fan blowing, the air, the carpet under my feet. We're going to get very centered in the present moment. That's one form of mindfulness. The other form of mindfulness is called metacognition. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking, becoming aware of what you're thinking. Okay, very important technique for changing patterns that you want to change. So when I combine Vipassana meditation with mindfulness, basically what it looks like is, and again, guys, I'm talking way too much here. I need you guys to interact with me because this is about you guys taking me wherever you want to go. This is not about me just talking the whole night. I'm trying to get you guys to get used to talking about what's on your mind. So when you combine Vipassana meditation with mindfulness, what it basically feels like is you work on you become aware of the air coming in and out of your nose, and then you become aware that your mind has drifted away, and then you become aware of pulling it back. So the meditation isn't just focusing on the air coming in and out of your nose. And like I said before, what they're finding in India is people aren't coming back to jail. The recidivism rate for the people who actually got really good at the Vipassana meditation, they're not coming back. So they're learning how to emotionally and psychologically regulate themselves by using these techniques in the moment. So let's take Fernando's question about is ruminating considered anxiety? In a situation like that, I would, if Fernando and I were working together, we'd work on some meditation, but we'd also work on when he's in that meditation, what are those anxious thoughts? What's a pattern? What's something that continually comes up for him as he's meditating? People, you're not alone. People like to ignore their pain. They like to, we like to watch football, we like to shop, we like to whatever, be a drink, we like to smoke weed, whatever it may be. But we're not taught early on the importance of being aware of what you're thinking about, being aware of what's on your mind. The reason a lot of people ruminate, thinking constantly, nonstop, over and over, one of the reasons obviously is it's habitualized, meaning they're used to their mind just wandering and wandering and wandering. So the more their mind wanders, the more they just get used to being lost in their thoughts. What mindfulness comes in and does is the more you do it, the more you're aware of your mind wandering, the more you become aware of what your mind is wandering into. So let's take, for example, what's going on politically in our country right now. We've got it's not the only, I mean, the major two parties, conservatives and liberals, in all out war. I mean, there's just most liberals would love it if all conservatives just went away, and most conservatives wish that all liberals would go away. And as long as that's the goal, we're going to go nowhere. In fact, we're going to backslide. That's why people are able to come in and make divisiveness a topic that they can run on, because the more people get divided, the more they're going to be able to feel as though there's no solution other than to kill your enemy. So let's take a typical liberal. Let's say I'm a tree-hugging liberal, I have few, if any, conservative beliefs or values. I need to start thinking about being so polarized. I mean, people don't stop and think about, why are they so polarized? Why do they think in terms of black or white? Like a lot of people have said before, a lot of people say, well, I'm a black and white thinker. But what they actually mean is, I'm a black or white thinker, meaning that I think in terms of polarities. I think in terms of opposites. So what happens is, people get more and more, they begin to identify more and more with that polarized thinking, to the point where they are just literally defending one side of an argument, because allowing themselves to be on the other side causes them distress. I have a side project that I've never really, I've developed it somewhat, but not like I want to. It's called demopublicans.org. And what that is the idea that I consider myself a Demopublican. What is a Demopublican? Obviously, you can tell by the name. I have Democrat beliefs. I have Republican beliefs. I have beliefs on a liberal side, and I have beliefs on a conservative side. And people might say, well, that makes you, non-committal, and you're Switzerland and all this. Complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. The idea that I have to be either or, I have to be a Democrat or a Republican. And honestly speaking, because I am in the helping field, meaning I've devoted my life to trying to help people with their mental and emotional suffering, I do tend to lean more on the liberal side. But that doesn't mean I want open borders. Hey, Angie, good Fernando. I don't know what you agree with, because I'm jumping around here. But I don't believe in open borders. I believe in Second Amendment rights. I believe that if I can work 50, 60 hours a week, most people can get off their ass and work and make a living. And this idea of just giving away free money to people ad nauseum is never ending is not something I espouse. I do believe we should be in some way moving towards some sort of universal healthcare system, because it's just ridiculous what's going on as a mental health provider, dealing with the insurance companies and people. A lot of times they have these incredibly high deductibles where they have to pay for everything out of their pocket. And it puts providers in a very difficult situation, because we have to, unfortunately, we live in an economic-based system too. We have student loan debt, we have mortgages, we have office rent, we have social security taxes we have to pay, we have income taxes, I pay. If I told you how much, when I found out someone paid $750 in federal taxes, we paid way more than that. So running a small business is very expensive. So I would love to be able to give away my services, but that's not the kind of culture we live in. So the fact that I have to be, or people impose the idea that I have to be a Democrat or a Republican, is just ludicrous to me. It's just ludicrous. And it's just a symptom of this bipolar kind of thinking that we have, where we're forced from a very early age to be this or that. And it's just, to me, I mean, if you think about it on a psychological level, people who are bipolar, meaning people who have clinical bipolar, meaning they're either bipolar 1 or 2, and what bipolar 1 or 2 is, and bipolar 1 is marked by more mania, and bipolar 2 is marked by more depression. So the person has more manic phases and then depresses down. But in bipolar 2, it's just the opposite. They have more depression and then they bipolar, and then they polar. That's not healthy. That's not healthy. I would certainly not think that anybody listening to this would think that, I would be, as a licensed mental health person, would be advocating to people, yeah, be polarized in your thinking. You either be always up, or you know what? I actually always be no, in fact, be always down. It's just insane. So getting back to the original question, or the points about ruminating, you got to get into what is on your mind. You got to get into it. There's no way you're going to be able to ever find peace of mind by thinking that you can eliminate what's plaguing you, what's bothering you. And most of the time, people ruminate on things that they are not dealing with. They're ruminating about worries, like Fernando asks, can ruminating be considered anxiety? A lot of times, I mean, think of how anxious, I mean, mental health, people's mental illness and all that is peaking at some very concerning levels these days. Think of what's happening as a country. We've got this, a lot of us are, struggling to get by, meaning that we've recently had to relocate out of Florida because, well, Florida, but that's a whole nother issue. But so we've had to start over in a brand new area of the country because we can't, people were losing their health care. And I wasn't one of these people that just, nope, sorry, $250 an hour. No, don't take any insurance. We took all kinds of insurance. And guess what happens when people lose their job? They lose their insurance. So now we've got a whole bunch of people who have lost their jobs. And again, guys, oh, good, Allison. Thank you. I don't know if you just logged on, but tonight's topic is basically whatever is on people's mind. But I was answering some questions. So ruminating is, Allison's asking, what is ruminating? Ruminating is when your mind is constantly moving. There's no peace. Your mind, you're just constantly worried or thinking about this or that, and your mind is just jumping from topic to topic or to topic. That's one form of ruminating. The other form of ruminating is you're specifically focusing on a few thoughts that you can't get off your mind, basically. And I was making the point before that those are the thoughts you need to work with. And I've always said this to clients or people when I'm speaking to them. Whatever you can't talk about, if there's something that, I can't talk about that. No, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. That is exactly what you should be talking about, because that is what is on your mind and you're not dealing with it. So again, guys, if you're watching this, well, not if, but those of you who are watching this, please ask a question or a comment, or please share this, because if you're in mental health groups, if you've got groups on Facebook, if you're on YouTube right now, share this into your live stream, pull some people in. We need to discuss mental health the way we would talk about physical health. There is nothing wrong with discussing our mental health. Okay? Mental health is as important, and I maintain it's more important sometimes than physical health, because now they're finding that our mental health, if we're in a state of constant depression or constantly, what was that? Oh, that was my son's picture he put on my wall. But if we're in a constant state of being anxious or angry, that's affecting the way our body heals. I'm working on a bigger project here, in the background of all this about healing. And I came across an incredible study the other day where these researchers, and I'm trying to get one of them on the show, but they found that stress affects wound healing. What? Stress affects the way a wound heals? Huh? Right. Mental illness, mental health, the health of our mentality affects the way our body heals. That's what they're finding. So I'm about to release a book here, well, not a book, but it's a whole thing that I'm working on. But we need to work on our mental illness. There's nothing wrong with having a degree of mental illness. Whoa, somebody just dropped a bomb question here. Rose, oh hey Rose, how are you? Let me just finish this thought. And again, if anybody ever wants to come on the show, come on the broadcast live, text me. I'm not spamming people and saving numbers and all that. Okay. I can send you a link where that you click on it and you can come on live and we can discuss what's on your mind. But we, getting back to what I was talking about, everyone has a degree of mental illness. Everybody. Okay. There's nobody. Ask yourself, those of you who are watching this live or those of you who are watching this after the fact, who do you know that doesn't have issues? Think of one person that you know that doesn't have issues. Nobody's working on them. Not nobody, but the majority of people aren't working on them. Why? Because we feel that mental illness is something to be ashamed of. We feel that most people, there's a shame with physical illness, but it's not the same thing. It's not the shame, the stigma associated with saying to somebody, hey, I feel down, I feel depressed, or or there's something on my mind, or something's going on. It's not like that. What we have is a culture where we're stigmatizing negative emotions to the point where people are killing themselves, which is just tragic to people who work in my field, because we know how, if you can just get yourself into a place where you're able to talk about what's on your mind, you will feel a sense of relief. So let's get to Rose's question. She's saying, hi all, I'm upset I missed Wednesday night's topics, but feel free, it's posted. So let me start with how hard it's been hearing and surviving for more than one near-death experience. Wow. So from my abuser pushing me backwards down a flight of stairs, landed on my head. Wow. Smashing on the cement floor. I was foaming out of my mouth, barely able to breathe, and didn't wake up until I was in triage at the ER. When I woke up, he was standing there over me, demanding me to run out of the hospital and not be seen because he was afraid it was going to be reported. It took me so many psychologists, and what ultimately helped me most was my neuropsychologist. Beautiful. She was able to help me decipher what my brain was doing, because obviously you had a TBI. TBI is a traumatic brain injury, which is definitely going to affect the way you process things cognitively, emotionally, the whole 9 yards. Helped me decipher what my brain was doing and helped me with my cognitive functioning, and did all sorts of tests without just throwing medicine at me. And every other doctor I wanted to use me as a lab rat to throw random medicines at me, and all the medicine had me worse because it wasn't healing the core problems. Absolutely. So sometimes when I get flashbacks of the abuse, since I now have PTSD, but I use the natural me, I am one. Great. Natural me, I won. Medicine such as mindful meditation, I was helpful. My tremendously overall types of antidepressants, along with yoga, beautiful. So now the healing process sometimes may get worse before I get better, but I don't ever give up on yourself. No problem. That was beautiful sharing, Rose. Thank you. So what Rose is talking about is she went through a very violent traumatic injury, which I don't know what your neuropsychologist found. I don't know what kind of brain scans or whatever you guys did, but if you've had a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, you know how that literally will scramble your ability to just be who you thought you used to be. So Rose has been, she's been with us before and has contributed a lot to our past shows. So she's sharing more here. And what she said at the end here is that I'm a very sensitive individual. There are a lot of people. In fact, I would pose that most people are very sensitive. Most people are very empathetic. But the problem is nobody ever really teaches us how to use and manage our empathy. Empathy can be a blessing or a curse in many ways. When you feel things a lot for people, when you are an empath, meaning that you're feeling a lot for other people, then you have a tendency to absorb a lot of people's emotions and a lot of people's feelings, thoughts, and all of that. But absorbing that energy is one of many models that you can use. And as somebody who does this type of work, you need to learn how to activate different forms of empathy in order to not just be inundated by some of the trauma you hear. So Rose, what I would ask you is, you said you now have PTSD. Rose, you had actually texted me about potentially coming on, so maybe you and I can work that out for another show. But what I would like to find out from you is, what kind of PTSD work are you doing? What kind of trauma work are you doing? Was the person who threw you down those flights of stairs, was he your first abuser? And again, guys, if you're watching this on any of the other platforms, I know it's difficult, but shoot me a question. Talk about what is on your mind. Talk things out. The only way you're going to heal is to deal with what's on your mind. You've got to talk about what's on your mind. There's nothing wrong with having a degree of mental illness. What Rose is talking about is a pretty significant form of trauma, and I don't know what happened, once you got out of the hospital. I don't know if you left the hospital because he was threatening you. I don't know what was happening with you along the way. When was he the first of many men that abused you? Did it start when you were a child? I'd have to figure out, what is Rose's relationship with Rose, because as anybody who's watched any of my live streams before knows, your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship that you have. So, I call it intrapersonal psychology, meaning, interpersonal psychology is you help people with their relationships with, home, work, friends, whatever. That's interpersonal. Intrapersonal is your relationship with yourself. So if you, ever want to look that up, just intrapersonalpsychology.com, and you'll go to my website. So Rose, I'll look out for some answers to those questions if you're still on. Janice is asking, most of you are a great therapist. Thank you. I appreciate that. When you lift the lid of anger, you get the real issue of hurt. How do you work through it? Great question, Janice. Well, it's a slow process, Janice. It's a process of it's a process of exposure therapy. Basically, exposure therapy is okay, Fernando, I'll get to you in a sec. Thanks, man. For exposure therapy is the idea that you have to slowly expose yourself to what you're afraid of in order to build up resistance, and not so much resistance, but tolerance, and it has to assimilate into you. The exposure therapy, though, has to be done very therapeutically, because there's a thing called flooding. So if somebody gets flooded and overwhelmed, then they're going to shut down, or they're going to potentially be exposed to too much too quickly, which could, be very damaging. And I use the example of the American Sniper many times before. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but he was the guy there was a movie called The American Sniper, and he decided one day to take a PTSD fellow warrior with him to the shooting range to, help him with his trauma by exposing him to the sounds of gunfire and the smells and all that. And, again, if this guy was a buddy of mine and he told me he was doing this, I would have been like, whoa, bro, whoa. I mean, tell me, does this guy have therapy? What level of trauma is that? What's his deal? Has he not left the house a lot? I would have asked him to pump the brakes. Now, what happened tragically was he took him to the shooting range. The guy got flooded, and he ended up shooting him and killing him at the shooting range. Now, here's a guy who devoted his life to protecting our country, and he dies this way. So that's what I mean by overexposing somebody. That's flooding somebody. So Janice, yes, absolutely. You work through it, whatever anger you have. Exactly. And like you said, get to the real issue of hurt, because as you no doubt know, Janice, you may know this, but other people may not. Anger is a secondary emotion. So the primary emotion is hurt. We don't like admitting we're hurt. Women are a little bit better, not being sexist, but women are a little bit better with showing their emotion, showing their hurt, crying, letting it out. Men, oh, not us. Oh, hell no. I'd rather be pissed and instead of, wow, that really hurt my feelings, wow, I mean, I can't believe you would. Why? Because we don't see that. We don't have fathers that walk into our room. I didn't. Nobody was coming into my room saying, hey, Stevie boy, anything on your mind? So, Janice, yes, I don't know if you're in therapy, if you're thinking about it or whatever, but one of the things you need to work on, sister, is what is that hurt? What is that real issue of hurt that is still affecting you? You've got to, as I've said since my first broadcast a month and a half ago, you got to take the it's okay pill. What's the it's okay pill? It's okay that I'm still hurting. It's okay. It's okay that I'm still hurting, because that for many times is what people, it's not okay. I'm 55 years old. I shouldn't still be bothered by this. I should be over this. And people, as you may have heard from psychologists or whatever, they should on themselves all the time. What's shoulding on yourself? I should have done this earlier. I shouldn't be like this. They shouldn't on them. I shouldn't be feeling this. And that just keeps people locked in these never-ending cycles of denial and perpetual just not wanting to deal with anything. Pat, I don't know if you're still on. I'm waiting for a question, my brother. But anyway, so that is what you need to work on, Janice. You need to get yourself into a situation with somebody like me. And when I say like me, I'm not saying I've come, this is a whole infomercial for Dr. Stephen Walker. I mean, in a sense, it's an infomercial for the idea of talking things out, sure. But luckily and thankfully, I've got lots of people that I'm working with to help. So when I say somebody like me, I mean, Janice, you need to find a provider who you can talk about what that hurt is, what that emotional wound is. People don't deal with their emotional wounds. They don't. They just leave them to be, like, oh, I'll just forget about it, or, oh, I try not to think about that, or whatever it may be. Biggest mistake you can make if you have an emotional wound is just not thinking about it and not dealing with it. Let me again use the metaphor I've used since day one. Let's say I got a big open wound on my hand here, on my arm. There's no wound there. A week later, you guys, or tomorrow or Monday night, you guys are back and the wound is now green and pussy, and you guys are texting me, hey, Steven, or whatever. There's no wound. Now my arm starts turning gangrene, and what are you talking about? No wound. This is what we do with our emotional wounds. We do not deal with them. We just let them fester and fester and fester until the point where they become so infected that they're literally pumping out infection into our stream of consciousness, exactly the way a physical wound would pump out infection into our bloodstream. And men, we are notoriously bad for this. Well, not bad for this, bad with this. We do not talk about things that are on our mind, because men do not like to admit that we're hurt. We don't like that. That's a sign of weakness. And what do most men hate more than anything else, besides being disrespected? Weakness. Admitting that we're weak, admitting that we have issues. So getting back to Janice's question or point, that yes, Janice, you need to work on whatever that real issue of hurt is, because it's still hurting you. It's still in there. You got to work on that. You got to make it okay that it's still hurting you, and you got to work on it. Okay. So let me get back to Fernando. He said, I recommend people reading a book called The Trauma Stewardship by Connie Burke. It's good at helping you care for yourself while caring for others. Since you mentioned managing empathy, thank you. Check it out. Trauma Stewardship by Connie Burke. Again, this is a delicate topic for me to talk about, but I hope Connie has some training in mental health. Now, why is that important? Because I do firmly believe that if you're going to be giving people mental health advice or mental health, um, whatever guidance, you should have a degree and some experience in treating mental health. I get that if maybe Connie was abused, she now feels she can help people with her. I mean, if Connie went through a trauma, that she can now feel she can help people with trauma. I mean, I hear you, but the problem with that is that it's kind of like if I had an appendix, if I had appendicitis and I had a doctor come in and help me with my appendix and took it out or whatever, now I'm going to give people advice on how to take out their own appendix. People need some training in mental health and mental illness if you're going to start giving people advice on how to deal with their own mental illness, because there is no one size fits all here. Just because one person had an experience with trauma or depression doesn't mean that carries over into somebody else. So my only advice is when you're reading some of these books, try to find people who have had some experience working with people in the mental health field, have carried client loads, have worked in, clinical settings, only because it really exposes us to a wide range of mental illness and how to work with it. So thanks for that, Fernando. Appreciate that. So Rose is following up. Yes, he was a predator. Yes, only abuser. He met me at 16 and he was 35 years older. He finally going to prison. I never gave up because he was also abusing others and I wanted to save them and me. So I've been in and out of courtrooms battling him. I can now feel for once I'm more than just a survivor. Beautiful. I joined support groups and also volunteer to help others who also have all sorts of PTSD because, like you said, I'm super sensitive and empathetic because it's all behind me and it's all past. The more I share and discuss my experiences, the more I help, the more I heal and hopefully help others. Beautiful, Rose. And then she's saying, it's in the past. Sorry, I can't seem to type. That's okay. You're allowed to make mistakes. So yeah, Rose seems like she is actively engaged with whatever trauma she went through. So that's definitely a form of healing to try to work with other people. And on that, meaning you're trying to empathetically hear their story, feel for them. Empathy is a very big part of what we do as clinicians, but it's not the only thing. Me feeling for Rose is the beginning of me helping to work with her. So we would go through a process of, I call it feeling it and healing it. But how you heal it is a process. It's a process that is very nuanced. It's very specific to the person, and it's guided by years and years of training and experience. Okay. So great to hear Rose is actively working on, she's saying she's recommending a book here, Light Emerging by Barbara Ann Brennan, a mental health coach, gave me this book and gave me more insight on how to heal within. Beautiful, because that's where it begins. That's where all of this begins. It begins by what is inside of you. We have a culture that's fixated on distraction, meaning that we love distraction. Distract from the inner world. Distract from the inner world. That's what our culture seems to be all about. Hey, Clara, I'll get to your question in 1 second. And this is exactly why I'm doing this, guys, is for you to pepper me with questions. Take me wherever you want to go. You're welcome, Rose. And let's work that other thing out that we talked about, because I think some of the viewer, or a lot of the viewers, would find your story interesting and compelling. But this is why I'm doing this. I'm doing this so that people can have a form, especially with this COVID crisis, that, to talk things out. So let me just finish up with Veronica here. So Veronica is asking, my husband is more open about his emotions than I am. I have a hard time sharing for that reason. What advice do you have? Well, Veronica, I would ask you, what's going on? Where did you learn that sharing your emotions is bad? Excuse me. most of what we learn early on is still affecting us. And people love to think, oh no, I'm not affected by my past. It's BS, people. Everyone's affected by their past. Every single person is still being affected by their past, just in a matter of degrees. And the people who have worked on it have a good manage that effect more. So Veronica, I have a hard time sharing for that reason. What advice do you have? Well, my advice would be, you got to get into that. You got to ask yourself, why do I have a hard time sharing? Just from your question, I would, and again, tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you're still on, but I'm guessing there wasn't a lot of sharing of emotion in your family growing up. People weren't sharing their emotions growing up. Maybe your mom or your dad did shut you down. Maybe something happened early on where you shared your emotions and you were teased or ridiculed, or something happened. There you go. Okay, I just scanned down. Veronica said, my family never talked about feelings. There you go, Veronica. There you go. It's conditioning, sister. And I've used this example before that to illustrate what conditioning is. Racism is the perfect example of what conditioning is. There are no racist babies. My 4-year-old kid who's asleep right now, he's not a racist. Now, if I tell him every day for the next 10 years, hey, you got to hate all black people, or you got to hate all white people, or you got to hate all Jews or Arabs or whatever it may be, then he's going to identify with those beliefs. He's going to identify with being whatever I train him to be. So Veronica, you got to start thinking about your thinking. You got to do a little mindfulness, a little metacognition. Well, okay, why didn't my family talk about things? How's that still affecting me? Is that a good lesson? Is that something I should keep going? Is that something that I want to keep going? Why do I need to not talk about how I'm feeling? Why am I ashamed to talk about how I'm feeling? Maybe you should talk to your family and say, hey, mom and dad, if they're still alive, or if you got a brother or sister, why didn't we talk about our feelings? Why didn't you guys ever? And trust me, Veronica, you ain't alone, sister. There was none of this in my family growing up. I could tell you guys stories about how people didn't even talk about things that I had to work out on my own later, like my mixed ethnicity. People did not talk about the black part of our family. Why? I'm not even get into that because that's a whole nother issue. But I was told over and over oh, no, you don't have any black in you, by my own family members. Insane in the membrane. But I had to work through that. So yeah, Veronica, you need to spend on. My mom went into turtle mode. My dad didn't acknowledge feelings. Well, there you go, sister. There's your insight. Now you got to work that insight. Like if I was a racist and I was taught early on that there's something wrong with black or white people, but I get into my 30s, 40s or whatever, and I start sitting with those feelings and I'm like, well, wait a minute, is that okay with me? So I want to hate all black people, or I want to hate all white people, or I want to hate all Jews or Arabs or whatever because I was taught that? That's the beginning stages of mindfulness, when the person wakes the blank up and says, this is bullshit. I'm not going to be like, I don't want to be like this. So Veronica, you got to get a little motivated here and be like, I don't want to be like this. Now, maybe you're okay with being like this. And I'm not going to tell you need to talk about your feelings or whatever, but you need to talk to yourself, sister, and ask yourself if this is okay with you. And if it's not okay with you, start working on it. Start working on it and realize that what you're being affected by is conditioning. And yes, absolutely. I firmly believe, because I've seen it, I've been doing this over 20 years now. People who are motivated to change can absolutely make changes. Anybody that tells people, oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks and people don't change, you know who's telling you that? The people who don't change. The people who don't change are the ones telling you people don't change. I try to share now, but I remember my mom in her turtle mode and her sadness can't seem to get out of that. You got to work on that belief right now, Veronica. You got to stop reinforcing to yourself that I can't get out of that. You got to start allowing the opposite of that thought to exist in your mind, that I can't seem to get out of that yet, but I'm going to start working on it. You got to start cultivating some optimism that just because mom went into turtle mode doesn't mean I have to. Because if that were the case, Veronica, if everyone who gets taught something, right, break the pattern, like Rose is saying, by being aware of the pattern. You got to be aware of the pattern. If everybody who was conditioned to think a certain way never got out of it, imagine what kind of society that would be. Nobody would ever make changes. And there's clearly example that people make changes. If you want a little easy way to think about change, replace the word change with learn. Just replace the word with change, because you can't learn without changing. You can't change without learning. So just replace the word change with learn. Now tell me people can't learn. Who the hell would advocate that? Oh yeah, people don't learn. People don't learn. People are afraid to change. And I'm not saying you're afraid to change, Veronica. I'm not saying that, but change evokes insecurity. Okay, change evokes insecurity, and what people don't like feeling insecure. I mean, imagine I'm a racist my whole life, and I start thinking, well, I don't want to be a racist. Oh shit! Excuse my language. Oh crap! Who am I? Who am I? So Veronica, and I'm going to get on. I want to get back to Clara, because Clara asked a really good question too, and I'm running out of time. You got to sit with Veronica tonight in your mind. I don't want to be like this anymore. That's the first step. It's not a quick fix, sister. It's not like you're going to, oh, all of a sudden I love black people because I've hated black people, or I love Jewish people. It's not like that. You got to sit with it for a while and get motivated to say, no, I don't want to be a racist. I want to be a racist. So that motivation gets you to change. And yes, I do firmly believe you give me any hardcore neo-Nazi, any black person that hates white people, any Jew that hates Arabs that hate blah, 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 who's motivated to work on that, they can make changes. Okay. So Veronica's saying, I try to talk to parents about it too, but they give me yes or no responses. I want more of a relationship with them. So that makes it harder. Yeah, you got some issues going on here, sister. Not anything that's critical, not like overly mentally ill, but you got some stuff you got to start working on. You may have to accept you're not going to get what you need from your parents to heal. Okay. You got to maybe accept that. They may be, I don't know how old they are, 60, 70, whatever. They may not even want to change. You got to start talking to Veronica and start cultivating a belief system that says, yeah, I can work through it. I can work on this. I got to stop telling myself I can't do this. I don't know how old you are, but the longer it takes, you don't want to be in your 50s and 60s and still working on this. Veronica, start tonight. Make a decision that I am going to work on what I learned about emotions, not being able to share them. I'm going to start cultivating some optimism. You know, there's a great book out there called Learned Optimism, written by a dude named Martin Seligman, professor at UPenn, vast experience in psychology, has worked in multiple clinical settings. These are the types of people we need to be reading, by the way. But it's about, pick up that book, Learned Optimism. What I'm guessing, Veronica, is you probably grew up in a very pessimistic environment. So check me out Monday night. Come back. We can talk more about this, but I want to get to some other questions. So thank you for your questions, Veronica. But to sum it all up, you got to work on believing that you can work on it. You got to work on believing that it's possible you can share your feelings more. Take a chance tonight. Share some of this with your husband. Hey, honey, I want to talk to you about something. God, it sucks. I can't share my feelings with you. What? Talk to him about not being able to share your feelings, okay? Yeah, I may need to start from scratch. Being Hispanic family is strong, but I need to accept it. Yeah, and Hispanic familia and all that. Yeah, there's definitely a cultural component to that. And there's a lot of cultural conditioning that we need to work on, because people think, oh, culture, no, there's a lot of dysfunction in culture that people aren't dealing with. So you're welcome, Veronica. I'm on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 p.m. Mountain. Come back and we'll chat some more. Clara's asking, Dr. Walker, what makes a man not own up to his mistakes or take responsibility for his actions? Clara, I hope you're still on. Yeah, looks like we got 3 people on from YouTube, which is great that anybody's even on. Makes it worthwhile doing this. Sure, Rose, it's called Learned Optimism. Learned Optimism, Learned Optimism. Martin Seligman. Just type any of that into Google and it'll come right up. Great. Just father of positive psychology. So, okay, real quick. Clara's asking again, what makes a man not own up to mistakes or take responsibility for his actions? I talked about it earlier, sister. Men do not like to admit that they have made a mistake. Men do not like looking weak. We do not like the women, men, whoever we're involved with, looking at us like we have issues or something's wrong with us. Why? Because we did not have, great, you're still on. We did not have role models that showed us it was okay to be weak. It was okay to be vulnerable. I never saw my father cry. I never saw any kind of I never heard my father apologize. These are all issues that I learned. There, I can talk more about how my relationship with my father had affected me and how I had to deal with that early on in my mid-20s to work through some of that. And subsequently I have, and I can talk about it freely now because what I normally would not have wanted to talk about, I've talked about. So now I'm cool with it. And I don't care who knows. So the main reason men don't like owning mistakes or taking responsibility is because we don't like admitting we're wrong. Look at, again, not a big fan of the current president, not because I hate Republicans or conservatives, but because this individual exemplifies a lot of male traits that are pathological and have caused strife on this planet for millennia. So I'm not saying he's all bad. He's done some criminal justice reform and he's done some good things with some other things. He's got this Middle East peace thing moving along. I'm not saying he's all bad, but as a man, as a human man, no, I don't identify at all with what he exemplifies. And this isn't bash Donald Trump. I'm just using him as an example of somebody who never takes responsibility. He never takes responsibility or apologizes. Never. He never admits he was wrong. And that's what a lot of pathological masculinity is about. Oh, no, hell no. If I admit that I'm wrong, people are going to think I'm weak, or people are going to think I'm wishy-washy, or I don't want people to think that I don't know what I'm doing. No, because if I think that, then, and this is the kind of crap that men learn. We do not have men. Again, guys, please share this if you're watching this live or after the fact, because we need to talk about our mental illness more. So getting back to Veronica is what makes a man not want to own up to his mistakes or take responsibility for his actions. It's fear. It's fear. They're afraid to admit that they were wrong because they're afraid of how they're going to look. Yes. And hi, Sabrina, how are you? Never too late. Yes, there's a narcissistic component to a lot of men. Now, remember, narcissism, personality disorder is a whole different set of things. But yes, men, and I'm a man to a degree. I've been called very chick by some of my friends who are female, but because I'm very emotional dude and I care about people and I talk about how I'm feeling. And that's a quote from a female friend of mine. I'm not being sexist. She said, "You're the most chick guy I've ever met." So, but anyway, so we do not like weakness. Men do not like admitting that they have insecurity. This is a conditioned thing in most men. I did my master's degree thesis on what is a man, what it means to be a man. And men do not like taking responsibility, Clara, because we're afraid to look weak. So if you've got a man in your life who, and I'm guessing that this is either someone close to you, your father, your husband, or whatever, Clara's laughing, saying sounds true. You talk to him, pin him down, dude. What the hell? Why are you so afraid to admit when you make a mistake? Or why can't you take responsibility for your actions when you hurt me? Guys, if you're watching this and you're in a relationship with a woman and you've never said, "Oh, baby, I'm really sorry that I hurt you and I should," she ain't gonna be around for a long time, or you're just eroding away whatever connection you guys have. So yeah, men need to own up to the fact that we learned some, and I want to use the F word, but some messed up things from our fathers. Not all. I learned a very strong work ethic from my father. I learned how I don't want to be a father. I learned how I don't want to be a husband. But men learn that weakness is to be avoided at all costs. And that's such a tragedy, because the men who are doing the carnage on this planet, because they're just unwilling to admit that they have insecurities and fears and worries. It comes out as anger, and it comes out and it bleeds all over people around them, and it messes them up. I know this from personal experience. I wasn't sexually abused. Thank God. Thank God I wasn't sexually abused. There was a little bit of physical, not abuse, but hitting and smacking and all that, which, isn't great. I've never hit my kid, but he knows when he's in trouble. But I didn't get any of this growing up. I didn't get any of that male sensitive, hey, what's on your mind? I had to teach myself that over time. So, Clara, I hope that helps. But my advice to you is, if this is your husband, your father, somebody close to you that you have an intimate emotional connection with, sit them down, say, look, honey, don't, try to restrict any real like crying in the beginning, because a lot of men don't like crying. I'm not saying don't cry, but I'm saying in the beginning, and just talk about, hey man, what's going on? Why won't you admit when you're wrong? Why won't you admit when you hurt me? Why won't you do that? Okay. That would be to see if you can pull that out of them. Okay. So had a few more people. I've noticed that Veronica feels if she learns a certain skill to communicate with her parents, she feels more connected. Yes. Nice observation. Ego. Yes. And Sinetta. Hey, Sinetta, how are you? Welcome back. I've been noticing that fear is what keeps a lot of us bound. Absolutely. Fear drives faith is my go-to mantra nowadays. Fear drives faith. Oh, I see where you're going with that. Right. But see, the problems, and we'll end with Siniera. The problem with fear is if we're not working. So fear, somebody broke down fear into FEAR, false evidence appearing real. And that's a great thing. I don't know who came up with that, but what happens is, when we're too afraid of things, we start projecting into the future like we know the future of what's going to happen. So the false evidence becomes, oh, I know what's going to happen. I know that this is I'm going to be plagued with this. I can't remember exactly who. I think it was Veronica. Let me go back here. Yeah, Veronica was saying that she's never going to get out of the turtle syndrome. And that right there is fear, because she's not only afraid that she's never going to get out of the turtle syndrome of just keeping things in, but she's now she's projecting into the future saying, I know the future, that I'm never going to get out of it. So now that fear keeps her stuck. Fear's got to be worked on, guys, because yes, we are conditioned. We are wired to have fear. If we didn't have fear, we wouldn't have evolved out of Homo sapien stage, because we'd have just been like, I got no fear. Wham, something gives us in a jungle, and oh, here's a cliff. Oh wow, what's up? Oh. Fear is an integral part of survival. That's why we have it. But we have we have a culture of fear. We have a culture of fear where we're using fear to control and sell people things and get people to do things. And that fear can be too much. So fear drives faith. I hear what you're saying, but I would look at it a little bit in reverse, where I would say maybe faith can heal fear. You know what I mean? Because too much fear will make you not have a lot of faith in the future. So I got to run here. Let's say Sanetta's asking another good question. Could the lack of empathy in our upbringing fuel our relationships now? You asked the question that you know an answer to. That absolutely. Lack of empathy when we're growing up. If we come from unempathetic parents, empathy, again, remember, is feeling for another person, trying to feel, not agreeing, trying to feel for another person. Sure, Sinetta. So if you grew up where you didn't have a lot of people feeling for you, absolutely, that is going to affect you. So yes, more so in African American and Hispanic cultures. Interesting. So it's a great question. I think maybe we're going to have to deal with that or come up with that another time. But so you're saying that in African American and Hispanic culture, kids are brought up with a lack of empathy. Now that's interesting that you say that. And I've talked, hey, what's up, Polo? What do you mean? He's asking to Severina. So, Sinetta, you're saying that in African American cultures and Hispanic cultures, yeah, I said that already. So, it's interesting, and I've talked about my mixed ethnicity. My grandfather's black, so I've always had a lot of black friends. And I get into, a friend of mine posted a video of an African American mother going into a school and yanking her son out and berating him in front of everybody and yelling at him. And I said, wow, that's a form of child abuse, which of course was greeted by his friend saying, you don't know black culture and you don't know what you're talking about and all of this. And so obviously touched on an issue there. But yeah, a lot of black friends of mine talk about being whipped and beaten and put in situations where they've been so normal, and it's not just black people, it's not just white people, it's all of us. There's child abuse and everything, but I'm only going into this because Sinetta opened the door, I'm thinking she's saying that in African American and Hispanic cultures, a lot of people are being brought up with a lack of empathy. So yes, we need to look at the way our culture, our conditioning is affecting our culture. So, Polo, I've never seen you here before, man. Thanks for logging on. You're asking Severina, what do you mean? I don't know what Severina was meaning. So let me see. Let's see here. What was Severina getting into? So Severina said, when he gets sensitive, I honestly don't believe it at all. It is like I stop feeling. So I don't know if you guys know each other or whatever, but I think what she meant was that she's been in relationships where the people that, or the man that she's in or with, when he gets sensitive, she doesn't believe it because maybe he's caused her pain, and that he feels that, or she feels that he's not being honest. So let's see here. Sinetta saying, not every day I love you being said, not everyday hugs are given. Okay, yeah, I hear you. Well, listen, guys, thanks for logging on. In general, Sabrina. So what are you talking about, Sabrina? Are you saying that you're in a relationship now where when the person you're with gets sensitive, you don't believe him because he's either gaslighted you or used that sensitivity as a weapon, or he's sensitive one day and then he changes the other day? Like you'll see a sensitive side, but then you'll see his hard ass side. So again, guys, if anybody wants to come on live and talk about some of these issues in an open way, you can. I don't know if you saw the broadcast before, but you can do it with your camera on or with your camera off and just doing the audio. So I'd love to have somebody, if you're interested in coming on, here's a number you can text me on. It's just a web-based texting phone number that I use to get text messages. So if anybody wants to come on and talk about something in a more in-depth way so I can give people an idea of what this work is like, feel free. So I'm going to log off. It's been a long but very fruitful week. Thank you again, everybody, for coming on. This is my live stream. I'm on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Please share this. Please talk about it. Please, let's get some more people logging on. I'm going to keep doing these as long as people log on and ask me questions. So I hope everyone has a great weekend. And again, I'll be on Monday at 9 p.m. Mountain. Have your questions ready. If there was anything from this broadcast that we didn't touch on, you can keep posting and I will respond to them as we go. Okay. So thank you for being there. Okay, so Sabrina's saying when any random guy or friend or not. Okay, Sabrina, but you got to work on that, sister, because what's happening is because of the trauma you've been through, as you've talked openly on other shows. Thanks, Rose. Hope you have a good weekend too. You're welcome, Sinetta. But Sabrina, you're projecting that pain onto other people around you. You're saying that because this man in my past, and I know it's not easy to work on, but not every man is going to hurt you. Not every man is going to use emotion against you. Okay. Thanks, Becky. Have a great weekend too. So you got to work on that a little bit. And Sabrina, I've been encouraging you to talk out some of this pain because you can find somebody to work and love, and if we let our trauma, our pain from our past convince us that we're never going to find anybody to love us, you're restricting yourself and that person in the future, a loving, wonderful person. And so that's the trauma still affecting you. But I feel you, sister. I know it ain't easy, especially when you've had copious amounts of physical and emotional abuse. Okay, guys? So seriously, please share this. Please tell other people about it. I'll see you Monday night at 9 p.m. Have a great weekend.